How's it going, everyone? Domadeus came back again with another video, and today we're going to be looking at my picks for the top 10 2-star characters. So before we get into it, let's actually look at my 2 stars here. And as you can see, I got some interesting ones. I have Starkey, I've got Quake, I've got the new Captain Marvel, Symbiote Supreme, Killmonger, so on and so forth. And these actually you can't get unless there's a special event going on, or you participate in the Marvel Insider Rewards. Like this month, we have the Spider-Verse crystals where you can get Symbiote Supreme, Carnage, lots of those characters as 2-star variants and above. So we're actually going to be just looking at the champions that you open up the game for the first time, you complete a quest, you get a 2-star crystal or a premium hero crystal, and you get a champion that maybe you don't know how to use or you don't know their viability in the game. So we're going to be looking at just those base set characters in Marvel Contest of Champions. And leading off, we actually have a tie between Iron Man and Superior Iron Man. So let's look at Superior Iron Man here. Now, these champions, for the most part, are practically the same with the exception of their class, Superior Iron Man being Cosmic and regular Iron Man being Tech. And now, anyone will tell you these champions are not the best in terms of damage or in terms of utility, but what they lack in those aspects, they do make up for a bit in survivability. Looking at Superior Iron Man's signature ability, Arc Overload here, Iron Man overloads the arc reactor in his chest if health drops below 15%, briefly extending his lifespan with the burst of 1,213.52 health. While in arc overload, Iron Man also gains an armor up for 6 seconds, increasing his armor rating by 1,973.25. Now, you open up the game, you get Superior Iron Man, you get an Iron Man, and you start playing, you're getting hit left and right, you're unsure of the controls. What's a medium attack, what's a block, what's a light attack, what's a heavy attack, and you drop down to that 15%. Well, these champions got you covered. You get a giant armor up buff which reduces all the incoming damage you would take from opponents' hits, and you very quickly go back up to 60, 70%, sometimes higher based on your masteries, and you're back in the fight. So, like I said, not the best in terms of damage or utility, but definitely a great character for a new player to pick up when they're just learning the aspects of the game. Next up at number 9, he's big, he's green, he's a fighting machine. We have OG Hulk. Now, Hulk, I put in this list for a similar reason to Iron Man and Superior Iron Man, but for also different reasons. Hulk does not have the regen that those two characters have, but what he makes up for in regen, he makes up for in damage. If you look at his signature ability here, Hulk Rage, Hulk is angered by receiving damage, strengthening his attacks by up to 355.18 based on lost health. You wouldn't like him when he's angry. But in all seriousness, his passive is when dropping below 25% health, Hulk gets ready to smash his opponent into the ground, getting a massive fury for 8 seconds, which increases his attack by 199.1. Now, if you look at his base attack here, we're sitting at 189. You drop down to 15%, you're essentially just over doubling your attack, and coupled with his signature ability at max rank, you are getting another 300 attack, which is essentially another 150 to 200% attack increase. So when you get down to the ropes, you retaliate with 1 or 2 punches, a level 1, a level 2, and you're back in the game, and sometimes even taking the win from underneath your opponent's feet. So Hulk definitely deserves the number 9 spot here on my top 10. Number 8 is actually a champion I don't even have at max rank, which I probably need to change up, and that is Winter Soldier. Now, Winter Soldier, maybe not the best champion overall, especially when you get up to 4, 5, or 6 stars, but he has some utility that's interesting that can help you out in a pinch. If you look at his signature ability, EMP Upgrade, an upgrade to Bucky's bionic arm grants his critical hits a 15% chance to power drain his target for 25.01% of the target's max power. The amount drain increases based on critical hit damage. So as you can see, that utility can come in handy, especially when you are trying to do a little bit of power control and you're just trying to go through the fight without too much fuss. But going down a little bit actually into more of his abilities, let's see. Oh, special attacks. Armor Piercing. Winter Soldier ignores all the opponent's armor rating. Incendiary. Winter Soldier incinerates the opponent, dealing 103.55 energy damage over 6.5 seconds. This also removes perfect block chance and reduces block proficiency by 50%. And finally, Hollow Point. Any bleed effect triggered during attack has its duration increased by 50%. Now, damage over time effects are great. Winter Soldier, definitely not one of the champions you want to go for if you're looking for a damage over time character, but definitely one of the ones you want to pick up early on to get you in the rhythm of switching stances, which a lot of the newer characters have, like Ronin or Proxima Midnight, or a lot of the other characters that proc different debuffs, like Iron Man Infinity War. The cool thing about Winter Soldier is you can essentially choose which debuff or stance you want to be in by dashing back and holding block. If you are up against an opponent that's maybe bleed immune, you dash back, you go for incendiary, and now all of your special attacks are going to hit with an incinerate, which will do less damage than his bleed, but damage over the time nonetheless. So Winter Soldier, number 8 on this list for good reason. Now, coming in at number 7, we have Age of Ultron Vision. Now, looking at this champion, you might think, Dom, why wouldn't you pick Classic Vision over Age of Ultron? He's got a little bit higher power index. He is a little cooler looking, in my opinion. But it really comes down to their signature abilities, Synthesis and Power Drain. You see, Classic Vision rather, when you start the fight and periodically throughout the fight, you'll generate power that brings you up to just about half full power. But with Age of Ultron Vision, you can more readily control that gain of power with his ability of Power Steal. Special attacks have a 100% chance to disrupt the target, taking 27.99% of their power as your own. And if you look a little bit lower at special attacks, if this attack reduces the enemy power to 0 or enemy to 0 power meter, the opponent gains a heal block debuff for 7 seconds. So a little bit more utility, especially going up against Wolverines, Mr. Sinisters, lots of the champions that have come out recently that have some pretty crazy regeneration abilities. So I like Vision Age of Ultron a little bit better, again, because when you're fighting, you don't want to have to rely on a random burst of power that maybe you want to launch an L2, and with Classic Vision, all of a sudden you're at an L3, you have to use an L3, which really enough grants you less power drain than your L2. But with Vision of Age of Ultron, you can really control how much power you're getting. You can heal block the opponent. You can also power burn your opponent, which deals damage based on the amount of power you take and drain from the opponent. So that's why I have Vision on here as opposed to Classic Vision on my number 7 spot. Now, coming in at number 6 on my top 10 list is OG Thor. Now, OG Thor is one of the many characters I'm sure you heard of that got hit with a 12.0 patch nerf hammer. If you've heard legends about Thor or seen some old videos, this dude used to put out crazy amounts of damage as a 4-star, easily knocking out Winter Soldier in a matter of 1 L3 with a couple of armor breaks. But with 12.0, they nerfed him to the ground. He was only able to do 1 armor break. They took down a lot of his attack and critical rating. But with some fuss made by the community, they actually gave him back a little bit of that pre-12.0 power. But if we look at Thor's signature ability, Ragnarok, stunning the Thunder God infuriates him and grants him fury, increases his attack by 37.2 for 4.5 seconds. Ooh, can't speak there. This ability you're not really worried about, only because you're really trying not to get hit and get stunned by the opponent. This really more matters for him on defense, but he's not a great defender, so we don't really care about that one. But the second ability is where it's at. When Thor stuns his opponent, he tears apart their armor, reducing it by 2,686.59 for 7.5 seconds. And it doesn't say it here, but you can actually stack that twice. So that's just over 5,200 reduced armor rating. So you're in a fight, you parry the opponent, you parry them again, and now you are hitting so hard that it takes down your opponent so quickly, especially if they're a champion that has lots of armor like Juggernaut, or robot champions like Sentinel or Darkhawk. Thor is an amazing champion to take against these opponents. If you just are looking for a quick fight, he's got a shock on the L1. He's got a crazy L2 that'll stun the opponent for super long based on your masteries. So that's why I have Thor at number 6. Now, jumping into my top 5, we actually have another 12.0 nerf hammery of sorts in Black Widow. Now, just jumping into her signature ability of subtlety, Black Widow strikes her targets with a subtle, calculated grace, reducing the chance of triggering their abilities by 69.99%. I don't know why that's not 70, but whatever. This chance is increased by 15% against science champions and decreased by the same against mutants. So, before 12.0, Black Widow, when you had her at max sig level, she was taking opponents' ability accuracy down by 100%. Now, when 12.0 hit, they took it down to 70 with an added caveat of going up against science, increased it to 85, and reduced it to about 65 or 55 against mutant champions. So, definitely not as good as it was pre 12.0, but if you're looking for a champion to go up against some trickier fights, if you're up against some evade characters or champions that maybe proc limbo like Magic or other really tricky fights, Black Widow is still a good character to have, just in the sense of you can go in and turn lots of those tricky fights into just brawl fests. Don't have to worry about as many of those fun and interactive nodes or abilities that some of the newer characters have when you go in with her. Again, definitely not as good as when she was pre 12.0, but definitely a good champion to have, especially when you have her up at a higher sig level. So, number 5, Black Widow. Now, number 4 on my list is actually an interesting pick, mostly because my top 5 is really more about the utility. But for this character, it really is all about the damage, and that is none other than the OG God tier himself, Starlord. Now, Starlord, again, not a lot of utility, has a bit of randomness to his L2. You can proc Power Drain, or a Shock, or an Armor Break, but it really is all about his signature ability, Tactician. As blows are exchanged, Starlord familiarizes with opponent's techniques, increasing attack by 8.71 for each hit of the combo meter to a maximum of 400 hits. Now, if you think about that, 400 times 8, that's 3,200 attack. If we look at Starlord's base attack of 181, that's an insane increase. Now, you don't want to get hit with Starlord. That essentially defeats the purpose of using him. You go back down to 0 combo, you lose all that damage. So when you're working with Starlord, you want to have a really good handle on the mechanics of the game. You want to make sure you have dexterity and parry unlocked in your mastery, so that way you can keep your combos up, and get that damage even higher and higher and higher. So, number 4 pick is Starlord. Now into the top 3. Now, I talked a little bit about survivability with Iron Man, Superior Iron Man, a little bit with Hulk, but if we're going to talk about survivability and regeneration abilities, there's no one else except for Wolverine, the only mutant on this top 10 list, for the main reason that he is the regen king and still is in a lot of different ways. If you're new to the game, Wolverine is definitely one you want to take up to high sig level to max rank with whatever star you have, but if you just have him as 2-star, he'll still get some work done. He has a bit more damage because he can proc bleeds with those adamantium claws. It'd be kind of a shame if he didn't. But mostly it's about this signature ability, cellular regeneration. Wolverine's natural healing factor accelerates, granting cumulative regeneration with a fixed 8% chance to recover up to 485.61 health based on the current power levels. So if you're at a L3 and you're not launching it, you get hit, you have an 8% chance to regen up to 25% of your maximum health. Now, that is crazy, especially, again, if you're on the ropes, you're learning how the game works, you're getting hit left and right, you have a chance of just regaining all that health and you're back in the fight like nothing happened. Again, he does have those bleeds for a little bit more damage, but definitely a character you want to pick up to get a handle on those mechanics of the game, the swiping, the tapping, the blocking, all that stuff, and just regen up all that damage you might be taking. So number 3, Wolverine. Now, at number 2, we have the queen of power control herself, Magic. Now, Magic is actually an interesting character in that a couple of years ago, she was honestly one of the worst characters in the game. She was one that people really try to stay away from, but she got a buff a couple years ago that really turned her into god tier character in and of herself. Crazy, crazy power control. Her signature ability, allowing her to deal lots of energy damage on the opponent when she reaches certain bars of power that increase when you gain your L2, your L3. But it really is all about her power lock and her power steal ability. If you get up to an L2, you launch that L2, you're stealing up to a bar and a half of power, and your opponent's locked for 8 seconds, and she just goes to town. She shuts down all their power gain, and you're launching L2s like no one's business, and you have just so much control over the fight that is so invaluable, especially in matches against Hyperions or Mordos or lots of those annoying champions that like to be defensive that have those passive power gains. Magic takes care of them like nothing. Number 2 goes to Magic. Finally, at number 1, we have maybe a controversial pick, only because she's another 12.0 banhammery that pales in comparison to her former self, but I still think she is the number 1 2-star, and that is none other than Scarlet Witch. Now, everyone's heard about Scarlet Witch, right? Pre 12.0, she was decimating Labyrinth of Legends. When it first came out, she was taking down Realm of Legends in record time, and a lot of that had to do with her crazy, crazy signature ability, which now is still good, but definitely not as good. As you can see, whenever a critical hit occurs for either player, there's an 85% chance the Scarlet Witch triggers her Chaos Magic, generating 0 to 8 buffs or debuffs. Now, pre 12.0, that was a 100% chance, and really, when you think about it, you weren't proccing debuffs on yourself, you weren't proccing buffs on the opponent. It really was just beneficial for you and really not great for your opponent. So I remember I got Scarlet Witch as a 3-star, awakened her, took her up to max sig, and was bringing her in to content with my 440 and 554 stars because she was just that good. Everyone wanted her as a 4-star. Again, she was taking out Labyrinth of Legends 100% for players like nothing. She was definitely the one character that I think Kabam wanted to take down a notch because they were about to release a bunch of 5-stars into the basic pool to where we have now. But Scarlet Witch, I think, still is the top of the 2-star list only because those buffs she places on herself, the Furies, the Cruelties, the Regeneration, make her hit like a truck, make her survive fights in a pinch, and if you get armor breaks or poisons or power locks or power drains on the opponent, you're able to control the fight as easily as a Magic or any other character that has lots of utility. Albeit a bit random, Scarlet Witch does definitely take my top spot for the top 10 2-star champions in Marvel Contest of Champions.